After more than 10 years together, the Minneapolis-based band The Replacements finally is enjoying commercial success, although some longtime fans are saying the band has sold out. After building a cult following through airplay on college radio stations, The Replacements have scored a #1 hit on album rock radio with their latest record, Don't Tell a Soul. And the group's song, I'll Be You, is climbing the Billboard Pop Singles chart. Bill Wareham of Minnesota Public Radio reports.
As The Replacements' lead singer and principal songwriter, Paul Westerberg, discussed the band's decade-long evolution over a beer at O'Gara's Bar in St. Paul, he recalled the early days with a mixture of bemusement and humility. What he described as a bunch of misfits who more or less stumbled onto a recording career.
The band had been together for 6 months, and we didn't know where we fit in. Somebody said, would you like to make a record? We jumped at the chance and went in there, total beginners, virgin territory. We didn't know what to do with the engineer and the guys who were producing it. I don't think they had a clue either. And it was fun. It captured the spirit, but it wasn't a good record, I don't think.
Post-punk thrash of that maiden effort eventually gave way to a more pop-oriented garage rock sound. But when the band signed a national contract with Sire Records in 1985, two elements from the early days remained: Paul Westerberg's emotionally frank songs and an alcohol-fueled recklessness that often turned live shows into spectacles of incompetence. Westerberg says the reputation, while well-deserved, turned into a creative burden.
You can pretend that it's art, but if it goes over once, then, the joke is over.
Paul Westerberg reasoned it was time for a change. The catalyst came in the form of Slim Dunlap, a guitarist who had done stints in several popular Minneapolis bands. He joined the Replacements following the release of their last album, Pleased to Meet Me. With a journeyman's work ethic, he reportedly brought an unseen degree of professionalism to the Don't Tell a Soul sessions. Dunlap says the new album surprised just about everyone, because professionalism was the last thing expected from the Replacements.
For the Replacements to do that, I think was, people didn't really expect that. People figured, we were going to continue on the alternative side of things and be happy with that, and we are doing it.
Don't Tell a Soul sounds slicker than its predecessors, a lot like the music Paul Westerberg grew up listening to on the radio. And following in the footsteps of some of the singer's favorites, the Raspberries, Jackson Browne, and the Go-Go's among them, the record earned the Replacements a #1 album rock hit, I'll Be You.
Necessarily us saying, well, we want a top 10 hit, we're going to make it on top 10. We just didn't want them to have an excuse not to play it. We didn't want them to come back and say, the drum sounds like it was recorded in the garage, we can't use it. I want them to say that what you're saying in the song, Paul, is not usable. That I can handle, because I think like I'll Be You, lyrically, is nothing like you hear on the radio.
I'll Be You's originality proved to be an asset, according to John Lassman, music director at KQRS, an album rock station in Minneapolis. Lassman was one of the first to play the song and report to Billboard magazine, publisher of the charts.
This sounds real mainstream, but when I first played it less than 2 months ago, and it was a lot of people freaking out, oh, what is that? Neat, but it's like different.
Having made the jump from the alternative stations to album-oriented radio, the next step for the Replacements could be top 40. The key, says Lassman, is the new sound.
It's a little less abrasive. There are cuts here that now even a conservative radio programmer may be able to play and want to play. Why don't you put a book up on our heads and put some pistols in our hands? Come
there's a catch to all this newfound success. Steve Perry, a contributing editor to Musician magazine and a longtime Replacements fan, says it's created a backlash.
The mainstream press reaction has been generally favorable, but in the alternative press, which is very close to the hearts of the Replacements because that's where they came up, the response has been much more mixed. Some of the more open-minded fans have simply suspended judgment because they don't know what to make of this perceived change in direction, but to a lot of people, it's a very offensive gesture simply because it means that the Replacements aren't going to be their secret anymore.
And Perry says the criticism that the band is sold out doesn't hold up against the music on the record.
I think the only sensible index for saying that someone is sold out is if you can say that they have done something that is clearly inauthentic, clearly out of bounds, in order to get somewhere. And I think the real triumph of this Replacements record is that it's exactly the record Paul has been looking to make for years. He's been scared to because he knew something about the backlash that it would entail, but I think this is, in many ways, the truest record Paul Westerberg has ever done.
For his part, Paul Westerberg was prepared for the backlash. The songwriter feels the real sellout will come if he lets critics and fans dictate how his music sounds.
The most daring record we could make was the one we made, for us to be sensitive or to show a side of us that Guns N' Roses don't or something. To me, that's the most daring thing we could do, to do what's not expected of us.
Paul Westerberg, lead singer and songwriter for The Replacements. The band continues its U.S. tour Friday with a performance in Houston. They play Saturday in Austin, and in the finest tradition of their populist roots, The Replacements play at a bowling alley in Dallas on Sunday. For National Public Radio in St. Paul, this is Bill Wareham.
This is NPR's Morning Edition. I'm Bob Edwards.
You're listening to Morning Edition on Minnesota's news source. Local broadcast of Morning Edition today made possible by News 11 Weather with Paul Douglas. Here too at 13:30 a.m. Minneapolis.